Chapter 17:16. Watching Yi Lingtian leave, Yi Xian did not speak and fell into silence. Beside him, Bai Yi said in a low voice, "Young master, do we kill this person?" Yi Xian looked at Yi Lingtian in the distance and said softly, "Her life is more painful than death. Let's go." With that he turned and left. Bai Yi glanced at the members of the Yi clan, and then he left as well. In the distance, Yi Lingtian walked to a large hall. Her eyes were a little dazed. Gradually she began to giggle, then she started to cry. 10,000 years of cultivation, fighting for the top of the great path, all in vain. Invincible? Revenge? There was no longer any meaning to it. She would never come back. The little boy who once said he would protect her forever would never come back. Inside the hall, Yi Lingtian suddenly sat down. She lay on the ground and looked at the little wooden doll in her hand. Tears flowed from her eyes. "I'm sorry." 2 hours later, an expert of the Yi clan walked into the hall. He walked to Yi Lingtian's side and whispered, "Clan leader." No response. The expert was taken aback and walked closer to take a look. The next moment, his expression changed and he retreated. At the same time, his face turned pale because Yi Lingtian was no longer breathing. At that moment, all the experts of the Yi clan gathered around. When they saw Yi Lingtian, all the experts of the Yi clan turned pale. Yi Lingtian was gone. The Yi clan was finished. That was the thought of all the Yi clan members at that moment. Without Yi Lingtian, the Yi clan had no ability to survive in the immortal world. At that moment, Yi Tian walked to Yi Lingtian's side and found an envelope in front of Yi Lingtian. Yi Tian picked up the envelope and opened it. Yi Lingtian's voice came from the envelope, "Redress." Redress. Clearly the Yi clan wanted to redress God Yi. Yi Tian slowly knelt down and the rest of the Yi clan followed suit. In the sky outside the hall, Xiao Tian and Heralian looked away. The two of them looked at each other and sighed softly. Xiao Tian whispered, "This Yi Lingtian is an ambitious person." Heralian nodded. Xiao Tian continued, "Not only did the Yi clan produce Yi Lingtian, but they also produced God Yi. Both of them were able to surpass the Yi clan's ancestors, but because of internal strife." As he spoke, he shook his head. "What a pity. What a pity. Otherwise the Yi clan would have surpassed the Moke clan in the past." Heralian said softly, "It is indeed a pity, but to us, it is a blessing." Xiao Tian nodded. If this pair of mother and son had always been harmonious, how terrifying would that be? Heralian also sighed softly, "Let the Leaf clan live." Xiao Tian looked at Hilarion and Hilarion said softly, "Brother Xiao should have thought of killing them all, right?" Xiao Tian nodded, "Yes." Heralion smiled and said, "Let the Leaf clan live." Xiao Tian did not say anything. Yi Xian asked solemnly, "Are there many springs of eternal life in the universe?" Bai Yi shook her head. "Few. Very, very few. It can be said that once a new spring of eternal life is discovered, it will cause a storm of blood. When the All-Heaven City spring of eternal life first appeared, at least 100 million people died in the All-Heaven City. Among them there were countless top experts. That year, my heavenly palace also lost a total of 6 heaven ascension experts." Hearing this, Yi Xian's face suddenly darkened. "Are heaven ascension experts like cabbages in the All-Heaven City?" Bai Yi shook her head. "Of course not. Even in the All-Heaven City, heaven ascension experts are super experts. It can be said that in the entire All-Heaven City, there are no more than 20 heaven ascension experts." Yi Xian's expression relaxed slightly. "Fortunately, it wasn't easy for me to reach the heaven ascension stage. If your heaven ascension experts were cabbages in the All-Heaven City, then what's the point of playing with hammers?" Bai Yi glanced at Yi Xian with an odd look on his face. "It wasn't easy? It wasn't easy for you to reach the heaven ascension stage? Damn it. You obviously didn't do anything to reach the heaven ascension realm." Thinking of this, Bai Yi smiled bitterly in her heart. They had cultivated for more than 100,000 years to reach the void realm, but this young master directly reached the heaven ascension stage from the spirit destruction stage. Reaching the heaven ascension stage in a single bound. She now suspected that the heaven ascension stage was specially set up for this young master. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. The space in the distance suddenly exploded. The next moment, a black coffin broke through the void and landed steadily in front of Yi Xian. Coffin delivery. "P.S. Is there a part-time job in Guiyang? I can do that for 5 or 6 hours at night. Please introduce me." Chapter 17:17. The sudden turn of events caused the expressions of the swordsman and Bai Yi to change. Bai Yi stood in front of Yi Xian. In the distance, a woman appeared silently. It was the black-robed woman who had appeared earlier. She held a blood-red chain in her hand. The black-robed woman looked at Yi Xian and smiled. "Young Master Yi, I'm afraid you won't be able to go to the All-Heaven City." Bai Yi's lips curled into a mocking smile. "You?" As soon as she finished speaking, she transformed into a white lotus and vanished on the spot. In the distance, the black-robed woman opened her palm, and the blood-red chain shot out like a bolt of lightning. Rumble. White light and blood-red light exploded. The two women retreated rapidly. After Bai Yi stopped, she was about to attack again when the black-robed woman suddenly vanished on the spot. Bai Yi frowned slightly. She stomped her right foot lightly, and a white lotus appeared beneath her feet. Rumble. A ray of white light surged from the white lotus and enveloped Bai Yi. At this moment, a blood-red chain silently appeared in front of Bai Yi. Rumble. The white light around Bai Yi cracked, and she retreated by hundreds of meters. But in the next moment, countless white lotuses suddenly appeared around her and exploded. Rumble. The starry sky surged and a figure retreated rapidly. It was the black-robed woman. After the black-robed woman stopped, she was about to attack again when over a dozen swordsmen appeared around her. The black-robed woman glanced around and sneered, "Are you bullying me with numbers?" As she spoke, she opened her palm, and a black token suddenly shot into the sky. Rumble. A huge black vortex suddenly appeared in the starry sky, and in the next moment, a powerful aura suddenly swept out from the black vortex. Yi Xian was speechless when he saw this. "Damn it. She's calling for people to kill me." Zhang Wenxiu, who stood next to Yi Xian, suddenly said, "Should we attack?" Yi Xian shook his head. Zhang Wenxiu blinked. "Pretending to be a pig to eat a tiger?" Yi Xian smiled, "Yes. Actually, if he wanted to kill the black-robed woman now, it was really a piece of cake. But he didn't want to. Because at present, Yi Lingtian definitely did not tell God Ye's father that he had already reached the heaven ascension stage. He didn't even tell the other party about his big brother. As Yi Lingtian had said, this mysterious force was very conceited. He was so conceited that he didn't even bother to investigate him. Therefore he didn't want to reveal his strength now. Furthermore, there was no need for him to personally take action against this black-robed woman. Zhang Wenxiu approached Yi Xian and smirked. "You're so sinister, but I like it." Yi Xian laughed. At this moment, dozens of people suddenly appeared in the black vortex. These people were all at least Endless World. Seeing this scene, Bai Yi frowned slightly. This force is not simple. In the distance, the black-robed woman sneered. "You want to compete in numbers?" Suddenly, a sword howl resounded from afar and then a sword flashed. Before anyone could react, the space between the black-robed woman's eyebrows was pierced by a sword. The black-robed woman was petrified on the spot. Yi Xian turned to look, and in the distant starry sky, a woman slowly walked over. The woman wore a simple linen robe, her long hair draped over her shoulders, and a hemp rope was tied around her waist. It was very simple and plain. The woman took a step and arrived in front of the black-robed woman in the blink of an eye. The black-robed woman stared fixedly at the woman. Peak of the Void Realm. The woman suddenly grabbed the hilt of the sword and stabbed it in. Swoosh. The woman's head split open and blood splattered. The woman turned to look at Wu Jiang. "What are you waiting for?" Wu Jiang was stunned, and then he hurriedly said, "Kill." As soon as his voice fell, he charged out with the swordsman beside him. The woman sheathed her sword and turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. "Senior sword maniac?" The woman nodded. She sized up Yi Xian and then shook her head. "Realm is not stable." Yi Xian nodded. Although he was now at the heaven ascension stage, this realm was not stable. After all, he did not cultivate it bit by himself. The sword maniac turned to look at Bai Yi. "Where is the woman?" Bai Yi said in a low voice, "The temple master is investigating the person behind this woman." Hearing this, the sword maniac frowned slightly. "Investigation? This matter is already so clear, why is there still a need to investigate?" Bai Yi glanced at the sword maniac. "Senior sword maniac, what do you mean?" The sword maniac suddenly turned around and slashed. Tens of thousands of meters away, the head of a mysterious expert was chopped off. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. This woman is so strong. This woman's strength is definitely not weaker than Yi Lingtian, and she might even be stronger than Yi Lingtian. The sword maniac suddenly said, "Young master, please wait a moment." As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly transformed into a ray of sword light and vanished on the spot. In the battlefield, bloody heads flew out incessantly. Seeing the sword maniac attack, the expressions of those mysterious experts changed drastically, and they fled. The sword maniac glanced at those mysterious experts. "Don't let a single one of them go." Wu Jiang nodded, and then he led the swordsman in pursuit. The sword maniac turned around to look at Yi Xian. "You're going to All Heaven City?" Yi Xian nodded. The sword maniac nodded slightly. "That's good. Our forces are there, so we can take care of each other there." Yi Xian was about to speak when a formidable aura suddenly swept over from the depths of the starry sky. In the next moment, she suddenly transformed into a sword light and vanished on the spot. Bai Xiao laughed coldly when she saw Sword Maniac suddenly attack, and then she vanished as well. On the other side, a group of experts from the Divine Palace charged at the members of the Sword Alliance. In an instant, those swordsmen from the Sword Alliance were surrounded. Yi Xian frowned when he witnessed this scene, and he was just about to attack. Meanwhile, a sword howl resounded from afar. Yi Xian looked up. In the depths of the starry sky, a sword light was shooting over like a meteor. It was extremely fast, and in the blink of an eye, it had reached the star area. The head of an expert from the ancient divine clan flew into the air. The ray of sword light descended to the ground, and then a middle-aged man appeared here. The middle-aged man wore a white robe and carried a sword chest on his back. Wu Jiang, who stood by Yi Xian's side, was overjoyed when he saw this person. "Senior Sword Ju." "Senior." Sword Ju glanced at Yi Xian, and then he turned around and tapped with his fingers. The head of an expert from the ancient divine clan was penetrated 3 kilometers away, and his soul was obliterated. Even his consciousness was instantly wiped out. However, this wasn't the end of it. Sword Ju suddenly formed a seal, and then numerous swords shot into the sky from the sword chest on his back. After that, they were like a storm as they slashed down towards the experts of the ancient divine clan and divine palace. The expressions of the experts from the ancient divine clan and divine palace changed drastically when they witnessed this scene, and they retreated explosively. However, it was still slightly too late, and some of them were directly slashed into pieces without being able to fight back at all. At this moment, both sides had split up. Yi Xian glanced at Sword Ju, and he noticed that Sword Ju was at the Heaven Ascension Realm. A Heaven Ascension Realm swordsman. The black-robed old man from the ancient divine clan gazed at Sword Ju with a solemn expression in his eyes. Bai Zhao's eyes were filled with fear as well. She hadn't expected that Sword Ju would suddenly appear here. After all, this man hadn't appeared for hundreds of years. Sword Ju didn't attack again. He turned around to look at Yi Xian, and then he sized up Yi Xian and said, "Have you met the Sword Master?" Yi Xian replied, "I've met him before, but I don't know where he is now." Sword Ju nodded slightly, and then he gazed at Sword Addict. "Take the Sword Master back to All Heaven City. Immediately recall all the swordsmen of the Sword Alliance. Anyone who doesn't arrive at All Heaven City within 3 days will be expelled from the Sword Alliance forever. Besides that, immediately declare war on the Divine Palace upon entering the city. Spare no one from the Divine Palace. I'm going to the Ancient Heaven Dimension." Chapter 17-19. Needless to say, Yi Xian felt that the Sword Alliance wasn't just tough. He didn't waste his breath. "If you dare touch me, I'll kill you." He was starting to like the Sword Alliance. As soon as he finished speaking, Sword Extreme vanished into the starry sky. Obviously, he was heading to the Ancient Heaven Plane to fight. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and asked, "Will he be in danger?" Sword Crazy glanced at the ray of light in the starry sky and said, "I'll bury him if he dies." Yi Xian was speechless. Sword Crazy glanced at Bai Xiao and the others in the distance, and then he said, "Let's return to the All Heaven City first." As soon as he finished speaking, they surrounded Yi Xian and left. Bai Xiao and the others didn't dare to continue chasing after him, because they were afraid that a new expert would appear in the Sword Alliance. They actually didn't know much about the Sword Alliance's overall strength, and they didn't know how many Heaven Ascension Realm swordsmen the Sword Alliance had, because these swordsmen weren't usually in the Sword Alliance. Meanwhile, the black-robed old man spoke abruptly, "I'm returning to the Ancient Heaven Plane. Bai Xiao, ask your palace master to get ready." As soon as he finished speaking, he led the experts of the ancient divine clan away. Bai Xiao glanced into the distance and then led the experts of the divine palace away as well. Within the spatial passageway, Yi Xian's group of 3 was traveling swiftly through the starry sky. Actually, Yi Xian was the strongest amongst them. However, they didn't want Yi Xian to expose his strength now. Neither the divine palace nor the ancient divine clan had paid attention to Yi Xian. In the beginning, the ancient divine clan had wanted to kill Yi Xian, but their attention had been completely drawn by the Sword Alliance. At the moment, everyone had forgotten about Yi Xian. That was exactly what Yi Xian wanted. He didn't want to expose his strength too early. He wanted to keep a low profile. Keep a low profile and act tough. Around an hour later, a ray of white light appeared in front of Sword Crazy and the others, and then they appeared in front of an enormous ancient city. All Heaven's City? Yi Xian looked at the ancient city in front of him. He had to admit that this city was indeed very imposing. The city walls were nearly 300 meters long. Standing in front of the city walls, one could not help but feel small. At this moment, an old man suddenly appeared before everyone. The old man looked at Yi Xian and bowed slightly. Li Xing greets the young master. Yi Xian smiled. Senior, you don't have to be so polite. Li Xing sized up Yi Xian and was shocked. He actually couldn't sense Yi Xian's reality. At this moment, the sword maniac suddenly said, "Have you made the arrangements?" Li Xing nodded. "It has been arranged. Young master, please follow me." Sword maniac nodded and looked at Yi Xian. "Let's go." One is God Temple, a group of ascetic monks who travel the heavens and rarely meet. The other is Spectre Palace. They are more mysterious than God Temple because they are not human. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Spectre Palace?" The sword maniac nodded. "I met one of them in the past. He is not human, he is very strange and mysterious. They don't seem to be friendly to humans because I can feel their hostility." Zhang Wenxiu suddenly asked, "Can you contact them?" The sword maniac shook his head. "I can't, only the sword master knows." Then she looked at Yi Xian. "If you use the sword master token again in All Heaven City, you might be able to contact them. Because the everlasting world is too far away, some experts who are further away won't be able to sense you if you use the sword master token." Zhang Wenxiu smiled. "In other words, if he uses the sword master token here, he can summon more experts?" The sword maniac nodded. "But I don't recommend young master to use the sword master token again." Zhang Wenxiu was confused. "Why?" The sword maniac glanced at Yi Xian. "Young master, do you want to use the sword master token again?" Yi Xian shook his head. Just when the sword maniac was about to speak, Yi Xian suddenly said, "Those forces respect Dad. It's not good if I use the sword master token to order them. Of course I'll use it again if necessary." The sword maniac nodded slightly and did not say anything. Yi Xian glanced at the sword maniac. "Senior sword maniac, does Dad have any other forces apart from the Spirit Palace and the Celestial Temple?" The sword maniac said, "Milky Way sect. But it's very far away from us. Other than that, there are other forces but I don't know the specifics." As she spoke, she paused for a moment and said, "The sword master is ahead of us and he's gone much further than us. We don't know where he's gone at all, nor do we know what sort of level he's attained. I'm unfamiliar with him as well." As the sword maniac said, the Sword Alliance was also unfamiliar with the green-robed man. Because the green-robed man rarely came to the Sword Alliance. The main reason why the Sword Alliance respected the green-robed man as a god was that the Sword Dao cultivation method of the Sword Alliance was left behind by the green-robed man. Moreover, there was a strand of Sword Dao intent left behind by the green-robed man. This strand of Sword Dao intent was the cultivation direction of the Sword Alliance's swordsmen. As they spoke, they'd entered the city. The streets were desolate and there wasn't a single person. However, there were many extremely obscure auras in the surroundings. Yi Xian glanced at the surroundings and said, "What's the attitude of the All-Heaven Mansion?" Li Xing said, "We don't know what their attitude is right now. However, the Sword Master is the Vice City Governor of the All-Heaven Mansion, so they probably won't side with the ancient Divine Clan and the Divine Palace. But he is not that Sword Master." Mother Lin looked at Xiao Yu. "He has the Sword Master token. Seeing the token means seeing the Sword Master. Moreover, he has the Sword Master's bloodline." Xiao Yu turned to look at Mother Lin. "Mother Lin, it hasn't been easy for the Heavenly Path Hall to develop to this point. Not only am I unwilling to submit to others, but many of the elders within the hall are also unwilling." Mother Lin sighed in a low voice. "Girl, do you want to break the contract?" Xiao Yu smiled and said, "Yes." Very direct. Mother Lin sighed again. "Girl, the reason why the Palace Master submitted to the Green-Robed Sword Master was not so simple. Moreover, the Green-Robed Sword Master has given our Heavenly Path Hall a debt of gratitude." Xiao Yu said, "I sent people to save his son, this is already a debt of gratitude." Mother Lin looked at Xiao Yu not saying anything. Xiao Yu said again, "Mother Lin, the Heavenly Path Hall's development to this point, its current scale, is all because of the efforts of our Heavenly Path Hall's countless ancestors. It was not given to us by others." Moreover, there is no one in the hall who is willing to submit to a 20-something-year-old brat. Mother Lin sighed again. Girl, that green-robed sword master is not an ordinary person. Moreover, it was us who promised him that we would respect him as our master. Now, someone has activated the sword master token, but we do not respect it. This is a violation of the promise made by our ancestors. Xiao Yu looked at Mother Lin. Our ancestors are our ancestors, we are us. Mother Lin slightly shook her head. Girl, let me ask you, is the current Heavenly Path Hall stronger, or the Heavenly Path Hall of the past? Xiao Yu was silent. Because the Heavenly Path Hall of the past was strong. In the past, the Heavenly Path Hall had more than 10 Heaven Ascension experts. Moreover, the current Hall Master was a Heaven Ascension expert. But now, there were only 4 Heaven Ascension experts in the Heavenly Path Hall. At this time Mother Lin spoke again. Girl, in the past our Heavenly Path Hall was so powerful, but we still chose to submit to that green-robed sword master. Sai, you are now the Hall Master of the Heavenly Path Hall. Everything in the Heavenly Path Hall is up to you. You decide for yourself. Finished speaking, she turned and left. At this time, Xiao Yu suddenly said, Does Mother Lin know that the ancient Heaven Realm's ancient divine clan has already declared war on the Sword Union? And their goal is to kill this young master. Mother Lin's footsteps stopped. She looked at Xiao Yu and Xiao Yu continued, The God Palace has already joined their camp. Mother Lin's eyes narrowed. You also want to join? The corner of Xiao Yu's mouth curled up. She opened her palm and a scroll floated towards Mother Lin. This is the condition they gave. Mother Lin opened it and in the next moment, her pupils suddenly shrank. The young man shook his head. Not yet. The old man nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. The young man hesitated for a moment and said, Grandfather, the ancient divine clan has offered generous conditions. So long as our sect master and the others keep the Sword Alliance busy, we'll be able to obtain 2 eternal spring water. The old man nodded and said calmly, What do you think? The young man fell silent. The old man glanced at the young man. Are you tempted? The young man nodded. The old man looked at the young man. Since you're tempted, then do it. The young man was stunned. The old man continued drinking his tea. The young man hesitated for a long time and said, I don't think it's that simple. Moreover, according to my knowledge, the green-clothed sword master is the vice city lord of our all-heaven city. The old man sighed softly, and then he placed the teapot aside and said, Little fellow, Grandfather is very pleased because you haven't been blinded by benefits. If you agreed to the ancient divine clan's request, then Grandfather wouldn't just cripple you, he would even expel you from our Lin clan. The young man was shocked, and he hurriedly walked over to the old man's back and massaged the old man's back. Please guide me, Grandfather. The old man looked up into the sky and spoke softly, I was fortunate enough to meet the green-clothed sword master once when I was your age. Do you know what your great-grandfather's attitude towards him was like? The young man shook his head. The old man spoke softly, Your great-grandfather was so humble when he faced him. You can't imagine it. I've never seen him be so humble towards anyone. Moreover, do you know how that green-clothed sword master became the vice city lord? As he spoke, a trace of complicated emotions flashed through his eyes. Your great-grandfather knelt on the ground and begged him to be the vice city lord. The young man was petrified when he heard that. The old man continued, Even so, he wasn't willing to be the vice city lord. In the end, your great-grandfather begged him bitterly, and he was only willing to be the vice city lord in name. At that time he had a request. He hoped that if anyone with the sword master's token came here in the future, he would help them. Do you know how your great-grandfather replied? The young man shook his head. The old man spoke softly, Your great-grandfather replied that if anyone with the sword master's token came here, the all-heaven mansion would repay him with death. Repay with death. The young man did not speak. The old man continued, Your great-grandfather had already reached the heaven ascension stage. The young man's pupils constricted when he heard that. The old man slowly closed his eyes. After so many years, I thought that the sword master's token would never appear again. I never expected that it would appear now. Not only has it appeared, but it's also the green-clothed sword master's son. As he spoke, he suddenly finished the tea in the teapot and said, Here's our chance. Pass down my order. Get all the experts of the all-heaven mansion to return immediately. If they don't return within a day, they will be expelled from the all-heaven mansion forever. Also, get all the elders who are in seclusion out of seclusion. Also, immediately inform the ancient heavenly clan that the all-heaven mansion is willing to help them. The young man was stunned when he heard that. Grandfather. The old man rolled his eyes at the young man. Stupid. We'll agree to help them first. When they think that we're going to help them, we'll suddenly stab them in the back. Isn't that great? The young man was speechless. FPZW. Chapter 1721. The Divine Palace. The Divine Palace was located at the north of the All-Heaven City, and the entire north was its territory. On this day, countless swordsmen suddenly surged into the north, and then they killed every single Divine Palace expert they saw. The sudden attack of all the Sword Alliance swordsmen caught the Divine Palace by surprise. Because they hadn't expected the Sword Alliance to be so resolute that they wouldn't stop until one side was dead. In front of a gigantic palace, countless powerful beings were engaged in a fierce battle around the palace. Although the Divine Palace had many experts, they were obviously inferior to the Sword Alliance in terms of quality. At least 2 experts were needed to suppress a single Sword Alliance expert. Therefore, the Divine Palace was at a disadvantage as soon as they fought. In the Divine Palace. At this moment, a middle-aged man stood in the palace, and he was the current palace master of the Divine Palace, Li Daoran. Bai Xiao stood behind Li Daoran. Both of their faces were slightly gloomy, especially Li Daoran. He hadn't expected that the Sword Alliance would attack the Divine Palace in full force, and it caught him by surprise. After all, the Divine Palace still had some experts that hadn't returned from the outside world. After a short while, Li Daoran suddenly said, "Did the ancient heavenly world reply?" Bai Xiao spoke in a low voice, "They've sent experts over and they'll be here in an hour at most." An hour. Li Daoran's face fell. If the experts from the ancient heavenly clan took an hour to arrive, then the Divine Palace would definitely lose a lot of experts in that hour. Because it seemed like the Divine Palace was much weaker than the Sword Alliance. They didn't lack in numbers, but their combat strength was too inferior. Meanwhile, the space before Bai Xiao trembled slightly, and then she was overjoyed. "Palace Master, the ancient heavenly clan sent a letter saying that the All Heavens Palace has agreed to help." The All Heavens Palace. Li Daoran suddenly turned to look at Bai Xiao. "Really?" Bai Xiao nodded, "Absolutely. Moreover, the Heavenly Palace has agreed to help as well." Li Daoran instantly heaved a sigh of relief, and then he turned to look outside the palace and chuckled, "The Sword Alliance is gone." Outside the Divine Palace, Yi Xian and the others had arrived. At this moment, the Sword Alliance's experts had completely suppressed the Divine Palace's experts. It was a crushing defeat. Yi Xian looked at the magnificent Divine Palace in the distance. At this moment, the Divine Palace was surrounded by a great formation, and these great formations blocked the Sword Alliance's experts. The sword-crazy fellow who stood by Yi Xian's side glanced at the grand formations and said, "We won't be able to break through them in a short period of time." Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Is there any movement from the All-Heaven Palace?" Recently, I didn't dare to look at the comments, so I didn't see your reward. I left my contact in your book comments. Add me, there is special service. FPZW.